It's the Brad and John Show.
You know, the amazing thing about editing the show is that I made a screw up for the live folks, but the people who are listening into the future on either our Facebook, what am I trying to say? The YouTube channel are essentially the regular old streaming channel, which is the redcircle.com. They won't know that I screwed up. By the way, today is May 29th. This is B Block. Okay. Couple things to talk about right off the bat here. I found what I was trying to find yesterday, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But first off, the Macron thing.
Yeah, this is great. So if anybody's been under a rock and didn't see it over the weekend, what happened, Brad?
He was landing somewhere, and some news organization was shooting a shot where they had moved the jetway up to the plane, and I think he was still on the plane. And you saw him come into the frame. He's like, you can see him through the door of the plane. And all of a sudden, he gets pushed in the face by someone who turns out to be his wife. So his wife apparently is not happy with Mr. Macron, who is the president, the premier? What is he?
Prime minister, whatever.
Prime minister.
The head Frenchie over there.
Right. The HMF, HMIF. no.
Head male Frenchie.
HMFIC. Okay, that's what it is. HMFIC. Okay. And it turns out it's his wife who is not happy with him. Now, have you heard this where a couple of the news channels hired, here we go again, the body language experts, and they've also hired the lip reading experts.
Oh, wow. And what did they say?
Well, it was on Armstrong and Getty yesterday. They had they gave the actual French because they were talking smack back and forth between each other in French after she pushed him in the face. And they were interpreting, and essentially it's sort of like husband and wife, sort of battling back and forth and stuff like that. Now, what's interesting about this is we talked about this, and John's going to say, well, we talked about that on March 21st at 7:22 because John's got all this stuff right at his fingertips. We talked about the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Macron have an interesting relationship in that when he was a student in high school, his now wife was his teacher, who at the time was in her 40s. And remember, we talked about this, and you didn't believe the age.
Yeah, she's like, what is she, 25 years older than
I think she's older than that. I think she's like 32 years. I'll look it up again. He's in his 40s. She's in her 70s now, okay? And I'm going like, hey, whatever floats your boat, doesn't bother me. Why is it, John? Why is it that the man is always older than the woman? Most time by 2, 3, 5, 6, maybe 10 years. But why is that? Because the problem it creates when you go to the old folks' homes, there's nothing but women there. There's no dudes. I say that if Trump were smart, he would say, I did something wrong. I married a woman who's younger than me. I should have married a woman who's older than me because chances are we'll die around the same time. She won't be in a home by herself. It should be a state law that every guy should be at least 5 years younger than his wife. What do you think, John?
It's a great idea that goes against basic human biology.
Right. Every guy should be 5 years younger than his wife.
Every man wants a younger woman. You want someone who is fertile. Men are always attracted to younger women. Women like older men because they're more experienced. They're more likely to tell them what to do, take a leadership role in the relationship. And women love some women who want to pretend that they don't understand biology or like, yeah, it's fine. I'm a cougar. Sure you are, sweetie. But anyway, in real life, Brad, Brigitte Macron is 24 years older than the president, Emmanuel Macron. She is 72 years young, Brad.
And he is what? Was that make her? He was like 48 or something like that? 49?
I guess that would make him 58.
No.
So 72 minus 24.
No, he's not 58. No, he's 48.
You're right. He's 48. He was
48.
Born in. Well, no. He hasn't turned 48 yet. He was
47.
Born in December of 77.
Okay.
So he's 47.
47.
You're right. My math was wrong.
Okay. So supposedly they had this fight. So which I think is.
Do you have any sympathy for him? Because I don't.
John,
men that are in this kind of position are there. Like men that are in that type of relationship are there because they choose to be. Like if you choose to be led around by the nose by some old bat, by some woman older than you, or by any woman really, Like, you've put yourself in that position. You have no one to blame but yourself. I have no sympathy for guys.
John, you don't know that. You may be a very... I mean, see, here's the thing that's sort of interesting to me. Okay.
Do you know that?
Well, okay.
Well, neither of us know, right?
Let me go back to my police days, okay? When I worked for the police department, okay? I was a young guy. I started right out of high school. Matter of fact, when I got my job as a police dispatcher, I was 17. I just graduated from high school and hadn't even turned 18 yet. I turned 18 after I graduated.
That's a great detail. Go ahead, Brad.
So I learned all sorts of things about human nature working for the police department. I was thinking about this the other day as I drove down Lindbergh. Remind me to tell my story. I was on Lindbergh yesterday. An interesting thing happened.
You'll forget. Go ahead.
The parking area and some of the police out there who are bushwhackers. You don't know what a bushwhacker is if you want to.
Hey, go ahead, Brad. You were talking about what you learned.
Okay.
We're going to keep you on track today. Go ahead.
Okay. So there are, I don't want to say a lot, but it's amazing how often this happens, that the woman is physically abusive to the man. And sometimes very physically abusive to the man. And
why isn't it reported, Brad? Go ahead. You've told the story many times. Why isn't it reported?
Because guys don't want to admit that a woman beat them up. You know, I mean, and
you're right.
And it's to the point where it's like that male ego thing. It's like, hey, I'm a tough guy. I don't have to worry about things like that. No woman's going to beat the crap out of me. And it was interesting because one of the guys I worked with actually talked about this, that in a previous marriage, he had a wife who beat the crap out of him all the time. And he would never admit this, you know? I mean, he admitted it to us now because he wasn't married to her anymore. But, you know, and am I giving excuses to the fact that most relationships, most physical altercations are man beating up women, which is abhorrent because most women are smaller and not as strong as most men. Now, we wouldn't know that from going through the transgender stuff because now they're saying, well, a transgender man.
But your broader point is, Brad, let's get back to your broader point, which is that in most cases, it's the man being physically abusive to the woman.
Yes.
But there are certainly cases where the woman is physically abusive to the man.
Right. And very rarely reported, and very rarely do the police ever get a call like that. Okay. Yesterday, changing subjects. Yesterday, I tried to look up something and I thought I had the story, but I didn't. I found the story this morning. Okay. Let me preface this by saying I love what Trump's doing with Harvard. I love what Trump's doing with Harvard. The Harvard's going, oh, you're taking away money from us. You're taking away this research grant. They have, depending upon whose source you use, 53 or 54 billion with a B, $billion endowment. Okay. They could not charge any tuition probably for what? 10, 20 years.
Yeah, for sure.
And still operate, still, you know, pay the professors, pay the maintenance and stuff like that. Okay. Trump keeps going after them. And after I read this, I thought to myself, yeah, I think even more than ever, Trump's right on this. Okay. And not only that is that what I was hearing the other day, and I'll get back to the Harvard thing in a minute. Interesting thing that the big colleges, the name colleges, are having an increase in people applying to go to those colleges, and the secondary colleges, which I would probably determine to be like the Lindenwoods of the world, and I'm a Lindenwood grad. I got my master's from Lindenwood, and not be literal.
But second tier, not quite name brand colleges,
right?
More
not
of an off-brand college,
not like Harvard or Yale or the Ivy League, or Stanford or UCLA or something like that. Okay. They are having more and more people apply, and the second-tier colleges are having less and less people to apply. Because, and you know what the article talked about, John? You know what the reason for that was? Because the education didn't really matter. What really mattered was you said you went to one of those colleges, and probably more important than saying you went to one of those colleges, you develop relationships with the people at those colleges that ultimately guided your life to success. And think about it for a minute. In like, how many Supreme Court judges have come out of SLU Law School? Zero.
None. Yeah.
Not one. I don't think there's ever been a Supreme Court judge come out of WashU Law School. Has there?
Yeah, I doubt that for sure.
Okay. So the idea being is, once you get into government, they all are rubbing elbows because they all went to college together. Now, probably the exception of that is Trump. But most of your politicians, like if you go back and look at, Barack Obama, he's got buddies in there that he went to school with. How many times, if you ever watch the show Suits, which is this fictional thing about law students or law practice, all they ever do is hire Harvard grad. That's, you got to have a Harvard grad. Everybody's got to have a Harvard grad. Okay. And the problem with this is that once upon a time, that may have generated the creme de la creme of grads. The people that came out of Harvard may have been the best doctors and the best, because there's a guy here in St. Louis who is an ophthalmologist, and when he first hit he started doing a lot of advertising, and he did a lot of radio, and he says, he's a Harvard graduate. And people go, oh my God, he's got to be better than the guy who graduated from Mizzou Law School or Mizzou Medical School. Okay, when the idea being is that, let's say there's 500 doctors that graduated from Harvard Medical School. How do you know that this dude who's here in St. Louis was not the 499th classmate? You know what I mean? He was ranked
whoever was
bottom
last
of the
in their class, they still get. It's the old joke. What do you call somebody who graduates last from Harvard Law School? Like attorney, right? Or judge. And they still graduated from Harvard.
And the guy who graduated last from Harvard Medical School may not be as good a surgeon as the guy who graduated in the top 10% of his class, maybe 20 or even 30% from Mizzou Med School. Okay,
but it still shows that he got through the Harvard curriculum, and there's a certain standard that you have to pass, right?
Well, but that's the point of what I'm going to say. What Trump is complaining about is that the standards of Harvard have diminished. Now, this is something, I want to read this, okay? Let me read the first part of the first sentence, and I'm going to ask you what this word means. This is for Harvard. For applicants in the top academic decile, is that 10%? Is that what that means?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Or maybe that would be the top 1/10 of 1%. Maybe it's the top 10%. Have you looked it up?
I have not. You look it up when I talk.
Okay, decile is.
Look it up real quick.
Yeah, so you're right, Brad. It would be in the top 10%.
Top 10%. Okay. For applicants in the top academic decile, this is Harvard, admission rates were 56% for African Americans, 31% for Hispanics, 15% for whites, and 13% for Asians, according to the lawsuit. This guy filed a lawsuit. His name is Grunbaum. He said Harvard, quote, now has to offer a remedial math course, which has been described as middle school math for incoming freshmen. He said that was a direct result of employing discriminatory factors instead of merit and admission decisions. In other words, it doesn't matter, according to what there's been, but the Asians sued Harvard Law School, they sued Harvard in general. They're essentially saying, they're not really taking the creme de la creme. They're doing this DEI stuff. They're saying, well, we got to have so many. And I'm thinking to myself, now hold on a minute now. Let me read this again. For applicants in the top academic decile, so that's 10%, admissions rates were 56% for African Americans, 31% for Hispanics, 15% for whites, and 13% for Asians. What's wrong with that picture, John? And I'm not trying to say that the white people should be on top, but if they're having to essentially reduce their admission standards to meet these quotas, doesn't that give you pause? Isn't that problematic?
Yeah, I think so. But also, so I think we've reached a spot. First of all, here's a personal anecdote. So when I was at WashU, so we'll go back 30 years here, Brad, WashU offered a very specific scholarship to St. Louis area kids. So if you were from the St. Louis area or you were from right across the river in Illinois, where the school essentially dumbed down their standards and would hand out scholarships to semi-competent black students. And those black students would not have to meet the same qualifications that a white student. So if you were a black student from the Hazelwood School District, you didn't have to have the test scores, the grades, the extracurriculars of John Combest. You just had to be functioning with a pulse, be able to read and write, and WashU would give you a scholarship to come there. So what that meant in the real world, Brad, is that if you met a black kid who went to WashU, you knew that if they were from St. Louis, they probably got a little help. They probably didn't have to score that great on their SAT at the time or their ACT. You had to take the SAT at the time to get into WashU. So you knew that there was a different standard for black kids than there were for your average Asian from San Francisco or your white kid from Hazelwood East. So now I think, Brad, if you met a black kid that graduated from Harvard, you would say, oh, that's cute. They probably took remedial math at Harvard and, had somebody holding their hand all the way through, and Harvard handed them a degree. And when they were done with 4 years, Brad, Harvard would be able to say, see, black gal from the city, Harvard degree, we're great, we're diverse. So I think, if you meet a white person that graduated from Harvard, they're probably of a certain intellectual caliber. And if you meet a black person that graduated from Harvard, they might not have been held to that same entrance standard or score standard.
John, I'll disagree with you there because I think there are a lot of very intelligent black people out there and a lot of really stupid white people and Asian people.
Yeah, and I didn't say there weren't, so don't suggest that that's what I said.
Because I know a lot of really stupid people. Matter of fact, only look in the mirror here. Oh, that's me. I'm a stupid white guy.
Yeah, so you get my point, though, Brad. You get exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, so if you meet somebody that graduated from Harvard that's black, you know that they most certainly didn't have to achieve the same scores or qualifications to get in. They got in because they're black. And if you're a white kid, you probably got rejected from Harvard and you had to go to Northwestern. Or if you couldn't go to Northwestern, maybe you had to go to WashU.
Which negates the whole idea behind, to me, about upper education, whatever you can call it, college education.
Yeah, any kind of higher ed, yeah.
Higher ed.
And I think that the system, let me interrupt real quick, Brett. I think we've seen a commensurate decline in public opinion about higher education institutions. If you look at what middle America thought of Ivy League schools 20 years ago, they held them in high esteem. Now you look at Ivy League schools as a middle American and say, yuck, I don't want to send my kid there to get indoctrinated. Get out of here. But I'd rather have a kid that went to tech school and has a good job and knows how to be a machinist or knows how to have a trade, most people would say, than, he learned about the intersectionality of discriminatory paleontology at Harvard.
See, you're making my point. I mean,
I know.
And to the point where right now, if I was hiring for a position and I had two people apply and one guy had a Harvard degree and the other guy had a degree from SIU Carbondale, I would say to myself, I don't know if I want to touch this Harvard guy. This guy may have gone. He may have been in the protest. He may have been, he killed the Jews. That kind of. you know what I mean? I mean, no, sincerely. I mean, there's a story that they're now doing the thing. This was in the news yesterday and the day before as well. And J.D. Vance is sort of Marco Rubio is pushing this, where they're going the students who are applying to get student visas from other countries come to the United States and study. They're now checking their social media sites.
I saw a headline about that today, Brad. And, liberals are apoplectic about
that. Because they say they've already found several people applying to come to the United States who on their social media sites have essentially said, we hate America. There are too many Jewish people in America. Too many black people in America. We hate America, what it stands for. We want to crumble the columns that hold up the American values. We don't want that person here. Let them stay wherever they're at, right? Go to wherever.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Brad.
Right. Okay. I'm never right, John. Come on, John. I'm never right. Never, ever, ever.